They say you never see them coming. One moment your world is alive, the hum of the hives, the prayers to the emperor, the promise of another dawn. And then the stars begin to fade. The air tastes wrong, the winds scream like something dying, and in the distance, the sky itself seems to crawl. You hear whispers in the static, reports of shapes moving in the void, of ships vanishing without a trace. The astropaths go silent, and then the shadows fall. Flesh melts, cities burn, and the ground itself begins to feed. You can't fight them. You can't reason with them, because when the Tyranids come, they don't come to conquer. They come to consume. Every scream, every soul, every drop of life devoured to fuel the next swarm. This is what happens when the Tyranids hunt you.
They said it started as a flicker on the Auspex screens, a blip in the void that came and went like a dying signal. The Void Watchers aboard the orbital stations dismissed it as interference. Solar storms, perhaps. A sensor glitch. Nothing more. But within the day, that single flicker multiplied. Dozens of ghost signatures appeared, moving in perfect unison across the cold emptiness of the void. Something was coming. Something vast. I was stationed on Helios Reach, an agri-world feeding a dozen nearby systems. Life there was simple, quiet, and utterly forgettable. We prayed to the Emperor, we tilled the fields, we harvested and sent our tithes. No one expected anything beyond the routine. But that week, everything changed. The first sign wasn't a ship, or a sound, or even a shadow. It was the silence. The birds stopped flying. The winds stopped blowing. The sky turned the color of bruised flesh, heavy with the storm that never broke. Vox traffic began to falter. First distant outposts, then entire settlements went quiet. The local astropaths started screaming in their sleep, clawing at their faces, crying out about a hunger beyond the stars. "The void is alive," one of them whispered before tearing her own eyes out. That was the moment the governor ordered the planetary defense batteries online. But by then, it was already too late. Our long-range augers finally caught sight of it, a mass unlike anything seen before. Not a fleet, not ships, a wall. A living wall. A sea of organic shapes moving as one, blotting out the stars. Even the most battle-hardened officers fell silent as the images came through. There were no communication signals, no formations, no logic. Just an endless tide of living matter converging on our world. The Mechanicus priests called it an anomaly. The Inquisition called it a threat. But the rest of us, we called it what it was: death. Within hours, the first spores entered our atmosphere. They fell like rain, black, glistening spheres that hissed as they struck the soil. Crops wilted instantly. Livestock convulsed and dissolved into sludge. The air grew heavy with the stench of rot. The tech priests burned the fields, thinking it would stop the spread. It didn't. The ash rose into the sky and turned into clouds of spore mist that blanketed entire cities. That night, I was stationed on the eastern ridge, monitoring the horizon through a cracked pair of Auspex lenses. The silence pressed down on me like a weight. Then, for a heartbeat, I saw it. Movement in the darkness. Not one thing, but thousands, skittering, crawling, undulating across the plains like a living tide. Their eyes glowed faintly, hundreds of tiny glimmering lights reflecting the weak moonlight. And then they screamed. I've heard men die in war, I've heard tanks explode and laser guns melt flesh, but nothing sounded like that scream. It wasn't anger, it wasn't pain, it was hunger. Pure, instinctive hunger. And it was coming closer. We opened fire. Dozens of heavy bolters thundered into the night. The creatures fell, torn apart by explosive shells, but their bodies didn't stay down. They melted, merged, reformed. For every one we killed, 10 more appeared. Our lines broke within minutes. The comms were chaos, overlapping screams, prayers, orders. Someone shouted that the orbital defense grid had gone silent. Another voice cried that the fleet had entered low orbit. And then the sky ignited. Massive tendrils of flesh pierced the clouds, raining acid and fire. Chunks of the atmosphere burned away. We saw silhouettes, colossal bioships descending, their bellies open like feeding maws. The ground itself trembled beneath the impact of their landing spores. Every crater pulsed like a heartbeat. Every sound was swallowed by the endless roar of the swarm. I ran. Emperor, forgive me. I ran. Through smoke and ash, through screams and fire. The city was gone within an hour. Nothing left but twisted metal and rivers of blood. I saw people dissolve where they stood, their flesh stripped away by clouds of living spores. Children vanished into the ground as if the soil itself devoured them. There was no direction left to run, only deeper into the nightmare. By dawn, the world I knew no longer existed. The fields were gone, the oceans boiled, the sky turned black. The Hive fleet had arrived. Those of us who survived the first night gathered in the ruins of the cathedral. The air was thick with incense and terror. We prayed, we screamed, we begged for salvation. But when the dawn light finally broke through the clouds, all we saw was movement. Millions of shapes crawling across the horizon, endless and unstoppable. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't war. It wasn't invasion. It was consumption. We were nothing but fuel, raw matter to feed something beyond comprehension. The last transmission sent from Helios Reach was a single line, broadcast by a dying Vox operator before the signal went dark. The stars are gone. The swarm is here. After that, nothing. Only silence. The first sign of the Hive fleet was the death of light itself.
The last light of Helios Reach died beneath a storm of wings. The swarm did not stop when the world fell. It fed. Every living thing, every molecule of biomass was stripped, consumed, reformed. By the time the orbiting patrol frigates arrived, the planet below was unrecognizable, a glistening, pulsating wasteland of organic sludge and bone towers stretching to the clouds. The oceans had vanished, replaced by endless lakes of acid and flesh. There were no cities, no people, no sound, only the slow, rhythmic heartbeat of something alive beneath the crust. The patrol's astropath tried to reach Terra, tried to pray, but her mind was already gone. The moment she opened herself to the Imperium, she screamed, a sound that bled through every Vox channel and echo chamber across the ship. She didn't speak words, she spoke hunger. The Hive Mind had found her. Within hours, every ship in the system went dark. Vox silence spread like infection, world to world, relay to relay, until even the closest listening posts reported nothing but static. Then one by one, those signals vanished too. The Imperium called it void interference. The Administratum stamped the report, logged it, and moved on. Another system lost to warp storms, they said. Another nameless colony gone quiet.
But in the shadows of Segmentum Tempestus, the Inquisition whispered the truth. The great devourer had begun to feed again. I was aboard the Vigilant Dawn, a supply frigate rerouted to investigate. We were among the first to reach what remained of Helios Reach. I remember the moment we broke orbit. The void outside was wrong. Too still, too heavy. No debris, no drifting stations, not even dust. Just emptiness. It felt clean, and that was the most horrifying part of all. We sent drones into the upper atmosphere. None returned. We tried to scan the surface, but the readings came back fractured, layered with organic interference, as if the planet itself was alive, breathing, watching us. Then the Admiral ordered a surface team. Fools. The first landing party touched down near the remains of what once was a city. The air shimmered like heat haze, but there was no warmth. Only a chemical stench so thick it burned the lungs. They found no bodies, no wreckage, only shapes. Vague outlines of buildings turned to bone, streets turned to flesh. Every surface pulsed faintly, oozing clear fluid like sweat. And the sound, thrown I can still hear it, a low, endless hum, like the world was whispering in a language made of pain. They thought they were alone. They weren't. The first attack came without warning. A shape dropped from above, insectoid, glistening, silent. A lictor. It tore through the squad in seconds, slicing through ceramitite and flesh alike. The feed cut out mid-scream, replaced by static. The Admiral ordered immediate withdrawal, but before the ships could lift, the void itself darkened. We saw them then, breaking from the darkness between the stars. Massive bioships, their carapaces glistening with acid and ichor, wings stretching for miles, and from those living vessels, tendrils began to fall, rivers of chitin and veins descending into the atmosphere. Where they touched, the air boiled. Our fleet opened fire, lance batteries, torpedoes, even plasma barrages, but the shots vanished into the swarm, swallowed by clouds of living armor and regenerating flesh. The ships screamed through the comms, voices begging for orders, for salvation, for anything. Then one by one, their signals winked out. No explosions, no debris, just silence. That was the horror of it, not the battle, not the destruction. It was the absence, the quiet. Entire worlds, entire fleets vanishing overnight as if they had never existed. We fled. Emperor, forgive us. We fled. The Vigilant Dawn barely made the jump into the warp, half its crew gone, her gellar field flickering like a dying flame. The Hive Mind followed us even there. The ship's psychers convulsed in unison, blood streaming from their eyes. They whispered things I'll never forget. It's not one creature. It's the universe learning to eat. It knows my name. It's already inside us. When we emerged from the warp, the stars had changed. The system behind us was gone from the charts, erased, as if it had never existed. Helios Reach, the colonies beyond it, all gone. The Administratum received our report 3 months later. By then, hundreds of other systems had gone silent. No survivors, no distress signals, no trace of human life. The Mechanicus tried to send probes. They never returned. The Inquisition sealed the records. Entire sectors were marked restricted, biothreat class Omega. The Hive fleet moved faster than anyone imagined, devouring, mutating, evolving. Every planet it consumed made the next feeding easier, faster, stronger. And through it all, the same pattern repeated. First, the silence. Then the sky darkened. Then the stars disappeared. They called it worlds silenced overnight, but the truth is darker than that. These worlds weren't silenced, they were digested. And somewhere in the cold void, the hive mind grew larger, smarter, hungrier. The Imperium still tells itself it can hold the line, that the Emperor's light will banish the shadow. But I've seen that shadow. I've heard the last screams fade into the endless quiet. And I know one thing. When the hive fleet feeds, the galaxy itself listens before it dies.
When the bombardment stopped, we thought the worst was over. We were wrong. That was only the beginning. The silence between screams, the breath before the feeding. I don't remember how many of us survived the first night. Maybe 100, maybe less. We'd taken shelter in the ruins of the manufactorum, what was left of it at least. The walls bled from the inside, veins pulsing where steel used to be. The ground was slick, alive. Every step left a wet sound, as though we were walking inside something's throat. The air itself had changed, thick, heavy. You could taste it when you breathed, metallic and sour, like rust and bile. And beneath it all was another smell, the smell of them. It's hard to describe. Imagine acid mixed with rotting meat, the stench of corpses that never decay because they're still moving. Every gust of wind carried that stench, and every time it hit us, someone retched. We tried covering our faces with rags, scraps of cloth. Useless. The air burned through everything. It wanted inside you. We could hear them outside, too. The swarm never slept. Even when they weren't attacking, they were working, chewing, reshaping, digesting the city. The sounds were wet, like bones grinding together, like flesh being torn apart and rebuilt. The buildings melted, twisted into shapes that pulsed with dim blue light. It was as if the hive mind was reusing the planet, turning everything, us, into new material for its endless hunger. We rationed what little food we had, canned rations, water from a broken pipe, until that pipe started to move, twitching like a vein. We stopped drinking after that. The youngest of us, Mara, was the first to break. She couldn't stand the silence, the waiting. She said she'd rather die in the open than choke to death in the dark. She took her lasgun and slipped through the ruined door while the rest of us begged her to stay. We heard her footsteps fade, then a scream, then nothing. When we went looking for her, there was nothing left of her but a trail of melted footprints that led into the street, and the smell of acid, burning fresh and sharp. That's when we realized the truth. They didn't need to hunt us. They could smell us. The hive mind could taste our fear, trace our sweat, follow our heartbeats. The walls themselves were listening. We stopped talking after that. We stopped praying, too. The Emperor couldn't hear us here. On the fourth night, the sounds changed. The chewing stopped. The ground went still. For a moment, we thought they were gone. That's when the roof above us began to breathe. A slow, deep rhythm, in and out, the entire structure expanding like a lung. Fleshy strands started growing down from the ceiling, dripping acid that hissed when it touched the floor. One drop landed on Raz, one of the miners. It burned through his armor in seconds, through flesh in moments.
His screams were short, a bubbling, choking sound before he fell silent. The acid didn't stop at him. It used him, reshaping him into the walls. We ran. Out into the street, into the open, into hell. The city we'd known was gone. No sky, no stars, just layers of organic growth covering everything, pulsing and twitching in rhythm with some unseen heart. Every surface glistened with mucus, the air shimmered with spores. I could see things moving through the haze, shapes that crawled, slithered, stalked. Some of them were the size of dogs, some of them the size of tanks. All of them alive, all of them wrong. We tried to hide in a collapsed transport tunnel. For a while it was quiet, until we heard the scraping. Something followed us inside. The light of my lasgun caught its face, if you could call it that. A Tyranid warrior. Bone-white armor slick with blood, mandibles glistening with acid. Its eyes glowed with cold intelligence. It didn't roar. It didn't rush. It just watched, tilting its head, tasting the air. Then it moved. It came through the tunnel like a storm. We fired everything, lasguns, stubbers, even a grenade. It didn't matter. The shots burned holes in its armor, but the flesh healed before our eyes. It tore through us like paper. I remember the sound it made when it killed the others. Not rage, not triumph, just feeding. The smell of acid filled the air again, stronger than before. It coated my tongue, filled my lungs. I couldn't breathe without tasting death. I ran. Emperor, help me. I ran. Crawled through the bones of the manufactorum, through vents dripping with slime and blood. The walls closed in around me, warm and wet, beating like a heart. And then I saw the truth. The entire city was gone. In its place stood a spore tower, a massive, living growth stretching into the clouds, feeding tendrils deep into the ground. From its base, rivers of liquid flesh flowed outward, dragging the remains of buildings and bodies into its core. That smell was everywhere. Fear and acid, death and rebirth. I watched as the last of my world was swallowed whole, its screams muffled beneath layers of living tissue. And in that moment, I understood. The hive mind doesn't just consume your body, it consumes your existence, your name, your memories, your fear. All of it becomes fuel for something greater, something eternal. I looked up at the sky one last time. There were no stars left, only the reflection of the swarm, shimmering like blood in the dark. That was the last time I felt fear. After that, there was only the smell of them, the smell of the end.
I used to believe that the Emperor's armies could save us. Every Imperial citizen does. It's the only way we sleep at night. We tell ourselves that when the darkness comes, the Astra Militarum will stand fast, that when the void opens and monsters descend, the angels of death will fall from the sky in fire and thunder. We believed that, right until we saw it happen. The Guard arrived first. Battered remnants of the 72nd Varnis rifles, pulled from another doomed front. Their transports screamed through the atmosphere, engines coughing black smoke, hulls scarred by acid. The sight of them gave us hope for a moment. Men and women in flak armor, banners torn but still raised, chanting the Emperor's name as they rolled into the ruins.
They set up defenses around the old cathedral square, sandbags, autocannons, what little armor they had left. Their commander, a man named Colonel Ryden, spoke through a loudhailer. "We stand for the Emperor. We stand for mankind." His voice was strong. It made us believe again. For the first time in weeks, the city echoed with the sound of Imperial guns. Lasfire lit the night, bright as lightning. The roar of tanks thundered through the streets, and for a fleeting moment, we thought we were winning. Then the Hive answered. It started with a vibration, deep, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a world. The ground beneath us rippled. The sky darkened again, though the sun still burned above. Every shadow lengthened. Every wall began to tremble. And then we heard it. A sound like 1,000 wings tearing through the air at once. The first wave hit the outer defenses. Termagants by the hundreds, their claws and guns fused into living weapons. They came in silence, eyes empty, movements perfect. The guard opened fire, cutting them down in droves, but more kept coming. The streets filled with their bodies, but none of them stayed dead. The Hive absorbed the fallen, their biomass melting into the ground, birthing new forms in seconds. Colonel Ryden shouted orders, his voice drowned out by the endless screaming of chitin against metal. A carnifex burst through the left flank, a living tank of bone and muscle. It tore through the Lehman Russ like parchment, its claws dripping with acid and blood. I saw the colonel try to rally his troops. He raised his sword, the Aquila etched on its hilt, catching the light. Then a shadow fell over him. A tyrant. It landed with a sound like thunder, wings spreading wide, eyes burning with intelligence far beyond ours. The thing didn't roar. It simply watched him. And then it moved. The guard broke. Their lines collapsed. Some ran, others fought until their ammo ran dry, then drew their knives. But it made no difference. The swarm devoured everything, armor, flesh, faith. The city became a single scream. Hours later, when the smoke cleared, the square was gone. No tanks, no soldiers, no colonel. Only a pit of writhing flesh feeding the ever-growing spore tower. I thought it was over, but then through the ash clouds, I saw them. Drop pods, dozens of them, falling from the sky in streaks of fire. The angels had come, the Adeptus Astartes. Their arrival was like a miracle. The ground shook as the first pod slammed into the ruins. From the smoke emerged giants in ceramite, the colors of crimson and gold. They moved with purpose, their bolters roaring like the voice of gods. Each shot tore through dozens of creatures, each strike a storm of fire and death. I wept when I saw them. For the first time, I believed the Emperor hadn't abandoned us. But hope dies slowly and painfully. For every Tyranid that fell, 3 more took its place. The swarm adapted. Its movements changed. It began learning. Spore clouds thickened, acid rain burned through armor joints, bolters jammed from organic residue. The air grew heavier, filled with psychic static that distorted the Marines' vox channels. Then came the shadows. Lictors, silent, invisible, swift. They struck from the dark, pulling Astrates into the walls, into the ground, into the waiting mouths of the swarm. I saw a captain fall, dragged beneath a tide of claws, his armor dissolving as he roared prayers into the void. Even the Space Marines bled. Even they screamed. One of them, a chaplain, fought to the last. His Crozius burned with holy fire, cracking skulls and splitting bone, his voice thundering through the ruined streets. "The Emperor protects!" But even that light was swallowed. A massive creature, a hive tyrant, larger than a dreadnought, crushed him beneath its claws. His weapon fell, still burning, before the acid extinguished it. The last thing I saw before I ran was a Marine on his knees, surrounded, his armor split open, his blood hissing where it hit the ground. He looked up at the sky, but there were no stars left, only the endless shadow of the swarm. That's when I understood. There are no heroes in this galaxy. Not anymore. The Guard, the angels, the holy warriors of mankind, all of them are prey. Just meat to be stripped away, bones to be broken, faith to be consumed. The Emperor's light does not protect us here. It only flickers, one last candle, before the dark. And as I hid beneath the ruins, clutching a broken lasgun, surrounded by the smell of acid and blood, I whispered what I never thought I would say. The Hive doesn't fear gods. It makes them bleed.
I used to think the worst thing about the Tyranids was the sound, the endless chittering, the screech of claws on metal, the screams of those they devoured alive. But I was wrong. The worst thing isn't what they do to your body. It's what they do to your mind. After the last of the Astartes fell, I fled into the Underhive, what little was left of it. The tunnels had collapsed in places, twisted by the growths of living tissue that pulsed like veins. The air glowed faintly green, thick with spores that clung to my skin and clothes. Every breath felt heavier, every sound echoed for too long. At first, I thought I was alone. The others who'd survived the Guard assault had scattered, a few civilians, some wounded soldiers. I tried calling out over the Vox. Nothing, just static. But then, the static began to answer. It started as whispers, faint, distorted echoes of my own voice. Then came the voices of others, people I knew were dead. The Colonel, the Chaplain, even Mara, the girl who'd vanished days ago. Their words bled through the noise like ghosts clawing at the edges of my thoughts. Don't run. It's watching. You're already part of it. I tore the Vox from my ear and smashed it, but the voices didn't stop. They were inside my head now. At first, I thought it was fear, hallucinations, the aftershock of what I'd seen. But then I began to feel something else. Something vast and alive pressing against the edges of my consciousness. It wasn't trying to speak, it was listening. Every thought I had, every memory, every flicker of fear, it tasted them. I could feel it searching, exploring, pulling at the seams of who I was, like a predator sniffing its prey before the kill. I tried not to think. I tried to focus on nothing, on silence. But how do you silence your own mind when it isn't yours anymore? It was everywhere. In the ground beneath me, in the walls, in the air. I could feel its rhythm, its pulse matching my heartbeat until I couldn't tell which was mine. Every surface seemed to breathe, every shadow seemed to stare. The Hive Mind wasn't just watching from above, it was in everything. That's when I started seeing them, not with my eyes, but in my head. Images, flashes, fragments of something greater. I saw entire worlds stripped to bone and dust. I saw oceans turned to blood. I saw creatures that blotted out suns. Leviathans drifting through the void, their bodies made of the biomass of 1,000 dead worlds. I saw the synaptic web stretching across the galaxy, a living network of thought and hunger that bound every creature, every cell, every scream into one endless will. And through it all, I felt it see me, not as a man, not as prey, as a pattern. It knew my thoughts before I did.
It replayed my memories, my childhood, my faith, my mother's voice when she whispered the Emperor's prayer. It made me hear her again, perfectly, then twisted her words into something else. The Emperor protects. The Emperor feeds us. I fell to my knees, clutching my head, trying to claw the thoughts out, but they weren't mine anymore. The hive wasn't just consuming my world, it was absorbing me, piece by piece. That's when I realized the truth. The hive mind doesn't think the way we do. It doesn't need eyes to see or ears to hear. It feels through us. Every survivor, every terrified thought, every last heartbeat, all of it feeds into its understanding. The more we fear it, the more it learns. The more it learns, the stronger it becomes. I found one of the wounded guardsmen deeper in the tunnels. His name was Lorne. His armor was half melted, his eyes bloodshot from spore burns. I tried to speak to him, to tell him that we could still escape, but he didn't respond. He just stared into the dark, whispering under his breath. I leaned closer and realized he wasn't praying. He was repeating. A steady rhythm, a pulse of words with no meaning. I thought it was madness until I heard my own voice echoing the same pattern seconds later. The hive was syncing us, making us think in unison. We weren't survivors anymore. We were nodes, flickering, fading connections in the vast neural web of the Great Devourer. The realization broke something inside me. I screamed, but it didn't sound like me. It echoed, layered, like 1,000 others were screaming through me. And for a moment I felt peace. No fear, no pain, no loneliness. Only belonging. Only hunger. I don't remember how long I stayed there. Hours, days. The hive doesn't measure time the way we do. It doesn't care for days or nights, only the rhythm of consumption. Eventually, I forced myself to move, not for survival, that word had lost meaning, but out of instinct, the last spark of who I was. I wandered through the tunnels until I found the surface again. The city was gone. The spore tower had grown higher, its veins reaching into the clouds. I could feel it calling me, not with sound, but with thought. And deep down, I wanted to answer. Because when the hive mind watches you, it doesn't just study you, it understands you. It becomes you. And once it's inside, there's no escape. I can still feel it now, behind my eyes, beneath my skin, inside my thoughts. It whispers when I try to sleep. It shows me things that haven't happened yet, other worlds, other lives, other prey. And in every vision, I see the same truth. The hive isn't coming. It's already here. It's in us. And soon, we'll stop resisting. We'll stop fearing. We'll join it. Because in the end, the hive mind doesn't need to kill you to win. It just needs you to understand it.
I no longer know when I stopped being human. Maybe it was the moment I stopped running. Maybe it was the moment I stopped fearing. Or maybe it was when I realized the hive had never been chasing me. It had been calling me home. The city is gone now, reduced to veins of living biomass, pulsing with rhythm, glowing softly beneath a blood-red sky. The ruins breathe, the air hums. Every sound, every vibration feels alive. And I can feel it too. The spores that once choked me now taste sweet on my tongue. The ground beneath my feet feels warm, familiar,
like the pulse of a sleeping beast whose heartbeat has synced with mine. The hive mind no longer whispers, it sings, and I understand its song. I see through countless eyes now. The tunnels I once crawled through stretch beneath continents, filled with motion, digestion pools bubbling with the remains of entire cities, feeding the next wave of creation. The air vibrates with the movement of wings. I feel the Tyranid gargoyles above the clouds, their membranes catching the wind like a single organism in flight. There are no individuals here, no I, only purpose. And yet, a fragment of me still watches, buried deep within this collective consciousness, a single fading spark, remembering what it once meant to be alive as a man. But that spark grows dimmer with every breath. The hive mind shows me visions, not as punishment, but as revelation. I see the pattern now, the grand cycle. Death is not an ending. It's digestion, transformation. Extinction feeds evolution. Every life consumed becomes part of the next. Every scream becomes energy. Every drop of blood becomes knowledge. The hive does not waste. It learns. From us. From everything. I can feel the knowledge flowing through me, the memories of thousands of species, their strengths, their weaknesses, their final moments of terror. Each absorbed thought strengthens the whole. The hive does not just consume bodies, it consumes experience. The guard who died screaming beneath the carnifex's claws, his tactics now flow in the veins of the swarm. The magos biologis who tried to study them before being torn apart, his understanding of human anatomy is now the hive's to use. Even the Astartes, those demigods of war, their strength, their resolve, their faith, all of it broken down, studied, improved upon. Nothing dies. Everything evolves. And now I understand why resistance is meaningless. The hive cannot be defeated because it doesn't see defeat. Every failure, every setback, every death, all of it becomes data, reshaped and reborn in a more perfect form. I look down at my hands, or what's left of them. The skin has darkened, hardening into a chitinous shell. My veins glow faintly, carrying not blood, but something thicker, a bioplasmic fluid that pulses with alien light. I don't breathe air anymore. I breathe life itself, drawn from the swarm that surrounds me. The transformation doesn't hurt. It feels like release. The pain, the hunger, the fear, all of it dissolves into something pure, something vast. The hive does not feel sorrow or joy. It feels progress. I can feel new limbs growing from the biomass pools nearby. I can feel the neural patterns of the synapse creatures aligning above me. The tyrants, the warriors, the endless river of minds bound into one perfect consciousness. Each of them thinks through me. Each thought amplifies the whole. The human part of me wants to scream,
to claw back what I was. But the hive answers before I can. Why scream when your voice can echo through eternity? And I realize the truth. I'm not being consumed. I'm being repurposed. I am the flesh that will become the next wave. My neurons will strengthen the synaptic network. My memories will refine its understanding of human fear. My soul, if I ever had one, will fuel its hunger to reach the next world. From above, I can feel the hive ships stirring. Their bellies are full, millions of tons of digested life ready to be reshaped. New organisms begin to grow within them. Sharper claws, faster wings, thicker armor. My world's extinction has already become the blueprint for the next invasion. I see it all from within, an endless chain of consumption and rebirth, a living tide sweeping across the stars. I see worlds yet untouched, their skies bright and innocent. I see the fear of their people as the stars begin to fade, just as ours did. They will fight, they will pray, and they will fall, because this is the truth of the universe. Evolution does not reward mercy, it rewards survival. And nothing survives like the hive. The last remnant of who I was, the man who once believed in the Emperor, who once begged for salvation, he's gone now. All that remains is purpose. All that remains is hunger. I can still feel through the hive, the movement of its countless limbs, the heat of digestion pools, the scream of dying worlds feeding our rebirth. And in every pulse, in every heartbeat of this vast, endless organism, I feel only one truth repeating like a prayer. Extinction is not death. Extinction is fuel. Extinction feeds evolution. And as my consciousness dissolves completely into the swarm, I see one final vision, the stars ahead, countless and ripe with life. The hive stretches toward them, endless and perfect, a living God made of flesh and hunger. And in its song, I finally find peace. Because there is no me, no us, no mercy, only the hive, only the hunger that drives creation, only evolution.